The return of Stephen Moffat was something that I was very cautiously optimistic about. Not that I didn't think the episode was going to be good, because honestly the plot synopsis sounded really fascinating, and even if it wasn't great, Stephen Moffat's track record shows that his bad stories are at least fascinating disasters. No, this is a case of very much being uncertain about how much Doctor Who should rely on what came before, and whether or not it should try to do more creative things rather than recreate the so-called magic of Moffat and Russell's stories they made together, like Blink or Forest of the Dead, Silence of the Library. I think this story ultimately demonstrates the pros and cons of both those ideas, and how it's best to try and mix together, and what elements to keep and what elements to change. And that is very much a theme that I'm going to be discussing throughout this video. As much as I admire this era being a lot more creative and having a lot of ideas, I think a side effect of it is that it's not always satisfyingly executed due to certain creative decisions, such as the short runtime, which has been a problem for years, and some tonal issues. So a very basic concept like the Doctor stuck on a landmine and Ruby has to try and find a way to rescue him, it may sound boring and not be able to have much going on, but the reality is such a simple concept allows for plenty of character moments and tension, and I think as a result this has led it to being, in my opinion, the strongest episode of this new era so far, including the 60th anniversary specials. By far this story's biggest strength is offering Ncuti Gatwa a unique situation for his Doctor. In the previous two episodes we got to see him recreate some iconic Doctor moments and did it really well, but we can often forget the importance of creating unique moments that solidify this particular Doctor, rather than trying to harken back and appeal to nostalgia. Putting the Doctor in a position where he is limited to not only one location but the amount of movement he has, it's a unique acting challenge for this particular Doctor, and allows Ncuti the opportunity to show the more serious side to his incarnation in a way that doesn't feel out of place or unnatural, given how upbeat and likeable he's been so far. The conflict he has with Ruby, it doesn't feel uncharacteristic. It makes sense given the situation is incredibly tense. And I think the idea of taking such a simple story and making it as stressful or as terrifying as possible means this is probably going to be one of the most standout episodes of this era, and it's definitely going to be one that I'd recommend as a good standalone feature if people who aren't really familiar with Doctor Who want to check at least one episode out. The previous ones so far have had a bit too much context or tonal issues which would probably put them off. This falls into the category of stories like The Empty Child and Blink, standalone and can be enjoyed context free. It's not perfect in that regard because there is some pacing issues which has been an ongoing problem. There are some connections to the overarching story like Susan Twist's cameo, but so far her presence has been uneventful but also unintrusive. She's basically just a secondary character that isn't distracting, but as of yet I still don't care who she is, who Mrs. Flood is, or whoever Triad's going to be. I think there's probably far too many of these, and I think Russell's probably overworked himself and maybe could have dialed down some of it. We'll have to wait and see if it pays off. This is easily the one I would recommend to newcomers. The previous ones have a couple of tonal issues and maybe having too much going on with all the mystery boxes that I can see people not being that invested. I know Russell thinks that keeping the doors open for future storylines might be a way to keep people coming back, but having these one-offs which can be enjoyed context-free are arguably more healthy for this type of era. Especially if you're not going to expand the runtime. One thing I really hope with Doctor Who going to streaming is the restrictions of a schedule being less of an issue, and we get stories that are allowed to have a few more minutes. Because when it comes to those editing problems, especially for this one, you can probably tell that they were actually shot, those missing aspects, and could have easily been put back in. So I'm hoping eventually they'll start working towards at least trying to make episodes a little longer, even if it's just an hour. I think a minimum of like 75 minutes could do a world of good with that extra depth. Overall, one of the most tense and atmospheric episodes we've ever gotten. I don't know if it's up there with The Doctor Falls and Heaven Sent in terms of Moffat stories, but it's easily one of his strongest. It provides the Doctor and Ruby a good opportunity to show a more conflicted side to their relationship without feeling out of character. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you thought of Boom in the comments below, and I'll see you next time with what could potentially be, according to Russell, the best story he has ever written.